family for a long time. Between Jay playing ball with your brother and then knowing your father was always coaching the team. Your mother would come down to the games, and of course you used to come down once in a while. So, did your brother play ball anymore? When I was 14, 15 years old, I followed the Yankees. I was a big Yankee fan. My father, may he rest in peace, and my brother, may he rest in peace. They used to stand outside. Like I said, I lived in a 4-story tenement walk-up, and there was 10 buildings on this side, and there was 10 buildings on this side. Straight across, millions of kids. Always had something to do. But the parents at night, there was no air conditioning. Those buildings weren't wired for air conditioning.
No air conditioning?
No, you had a fan. That was it. And they would stand out at nighttime after dinner, because it was hot in the house. So they stood outside, and they would argue. One guy was a Giant fan, the New York Giants, not the Willie Mays, and another guy would be a Dodger fan. He liked Duke Snyder. Then there'd be a Yankee fan. He liked Mickey Mantle, and they would, all the people, all the adults. I was a kid back then. They used to argue who was better, what team was better. I remember that. That was back in like 58, 57. I lived around the corner from Gil Hodges. You heard of Gil Hodges, right?
Yeah.
I lived around the corner from him when I was married. And these guys were great ball players, but really never made a ton of money. There was one black kid in my neighborhood, and his father was the super. So we were friendly with him because we had all the benefits. We used to play down the basement. They had like a gigantic basement. We used to play down there. He would set up a shower for us in the backyard when we were little kids. And he was a nice kid, real nice kid. Bernie Johnson, that was his name. And so, other than him, there was really no black kids. I never really interacted with them, Am I on camera?
Yeah.
Oh, how do you? Oh, hi. I didn't realize. Okay. Never breakfast at home.
That's not a question.
Never breakfast at home.
Yeah.
Why don't I have breakfast at home?
Yeah.
I just enjoy having breakfast out. I like being served. I can get more of a variety of what I like, and it gives me a chance to get out of the house. And breakfast is messy. You cook it, you make bacon in the house, or sausages, or even the cleanup is not good. So I told my wife, and this is when we got married, forget about breakfast at home. We'll just eat out breakfast. It's cheap enough. You know what I mean? How much is it to eat breakfast? You can have a good breakfast for 2 people for like $12 or $15. But then it adds up. And even when my kids were young, both my kids who are a lot older now, but we all used to go out to breakfast. And the only time I might have had breakfast home is when I was sick. And maybe I couldn't get out of bed, But other than that's one thing I look forward to. I've eaten out enough breakfasts that I could have bought 5 Mercedes-Benz already. Between the tips and when I go with somebody else, I usually pay the bill, My sons bring their girlfriends along. Sometimes we meet them at Sweet Lou's on a Saturday morning or a Sunday morning. So, then it can get expensive. But I would never make my kids pay, so. I made that decision, I would say, when we got married.
Really?
Yeah, which is back in 1968. And I'm sure, and I don't remember 100%, but I'm sure there was sometimes because of the kids being little, it was hard to get them dressed and get out of the house. And we might have had breakfast at home. Kids may have had cereal. At least in the last 30 years or 35 years, if I had breakfast home once or twice, it was a lot. I would say 90% one place. Sweet Lou's right down the block. Good advertising for you guys. Best breakfast you can have. A home cooked meal that I never had. It's either pancakes or eggs, and if I get pancakes, I get eggs too. And bacon, and sometimes ham. Very well done. And bacon, very crispy.
On the weekends too?
Weekends too.
Wow. That's a story right there.
retired from the film industry in 2011. That was from Technicolor, Color by Technicolor, big laboratory. Met a lot of stars. Great job, best job you can have. Both my kids worked there too, but unfortunately, because of the digital factor coming in, and that started to come in around 2000. You know, it was slowly coming in. You know, back in the day, back in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s, all the commercials was, 90% of it was on film. You know, I'd come into work, I'd have work to do from the floor to the ceiling. You know, never ended. You can work 7 days a week, and sometimes we did. You know, and I had my own. I was a vendor for the company, aside from my job, which I was getting paid for, and all the benefits. I was a vendor for the company. They hired me and two other guys to do movies, to cut the movies. After the editor would edit them, they'd bring the film to me. We already had the film stored already because we did the developing, and we would pick out all the negative that they wanted according to the work print, and we would match it to the work print, put it all together, and that's what we would do. But that took sometimes 3 months to do, 2 or 3 months to do that. So the company didn't want to do it on company time because it took up too much time, and other things couldn't get done. So they hired us to do it. The first movie I ever did was Dog Day Afternoon, which is with Al Pacino, which was a very big movie at the time, and they trusted us to do it. They took a chance because you can one cut with the scissor and you could screw the guy's movie up. But we did it, and fortunately we did a good job, and then we got a lot more jobs and a lot of movies. I have my name on. You know, at the end, the credits, it'll say negative cutting. It'll say my name on it. And a lot I didn't get credit for because the company just didn't want to put our names on it. Even though we did it, they didn't want to put our names on it. But we did a lot. I worked on at least 4 or 5 or 6 Academy Award movies that did win. Actually won the Academy Award.
Wow.
Annie Hall, was one of them.
You worked on Annie Hall?
Yeah, I put that whole movie together.
Get the hell out of here.
Yeah, Annie Hall, Dog Day Afternoon, Goodfellas, which you see on Bronx Tales, Cape Fear, a lot, so many movies. Matter of fact, I was going to bring, I forgot. I got next time I see you, if you remind me, I have a list at home on a lot of the movies that I did, worked on, which is over 200, at least 200 movies.
Do you like the movies? You like to go see movies?
If the movie's good, yeah. And talking about, not to be boring, but talking about the movies I recently saw, Call of the Wild. That's the.
You just saw it. You recently
yeah, I just saw it. I just saw it this weekend,
Oh, really?
and it was a very good movie. It was a very good movie.
Harrison Ford.
Harrison Ford and a lot of dogs. This thing looks so real. People are telling me, the people I was with said they saw an interview with Harrison Ford, and he said the dogs weren't real. I can't believe that the dogs weren't real. They could have never made this movie 15 or 20 years ago to look like this. You have to see it to believe it. I still think the dogs are real. I don't know how they weren't real. I saw things going, downhill with the film, and they were going to switch over to digital. My place, they also had a digital place in the place, and I didn't want to be transferred to that department. I really wasn't that interested. If I was in the 50s at that time, I would have, obviously I would have done it. But I was already in the 60s, and of retirement age, and with the benefits they gave me, and I stayed home for 2 years. They let me collect unemployment. They gave me a nice severance package. And I said, my wife's still working. She's a teacher at a private school, and why not? I worked so many years, worked over 45 years in this industry. It's time to do nothing. Then I stayed home for 2 years, and I was bored to death. So that's why I do the crossing guard thing. At least it gets me up in the morning, and I enjoy it. I enjoy the kids. When it's cold out, it's not too nice, but I sit in the car, Sure. Want to hear it again? This is back in the 77, I would say 1977, because I moved in 78. So this had to be around that time. So I would say 77 when I worked for the motion picture company. there was like a food stand built in the wall in the building that I worked in. I don't know if a lot of places had that, but this place had it. You know, they sold sandwiches, they sold coffee, they sold rolls, and they did some business. Some Indian guy owned us. I think he bought half for India with the money he made from the stand. Nice people. So, but I knew them, and that day when I walked in, he said to me, "Could you do me a favor?" He said, "My partner didn't come in, and I can't leave the stand. So, could you deliver this coffee to John Lennon? He's in his office." I said, "Really?" I was a young kid back then. I mean, I was maybe 26, 25. You know, I didn't realize I knew who he was, and you know, I just didn't realize the significance of meeting this guy. You know how important that was. You know how important it would turn out to be. You know, and it was a little office. It wasn't where they recorded music. I guess it was where they did their office work, whatever. And he was sitting. I rang the bell. He let me in. He's sitting there with another guy who I didn't know who he was. And he looked at me, he goes, "Look, I have Paul Simon delivering my coffee." He thought to me, and he was laughing. One word led to another. So, you know, I shook his hand, he shook my hand, he said, "Thanks for delivering the coffee." And before I left, I said, "Is it possible to get your autograph?" "Yeah, sure, no problem." Gave me his autograph. I lost it. When I moved, I misplaced. You know, who knew back then he'd get shot 2 years later and his autograph would be worth about $10,000. If I was smart, I would have ran out and got an album, you know, and because there were a million record stores back then, a million of them. I could have ran out and got an album, and there's certainly no doubt in my mind that he would have signed that album for me. Now, if I would have had it dated, it'd probably worth $100,000. But too late now. Water under the bridge. But I met a lot of big stars. You know, I met De Niro. You know, I met Meryl Streep. I met Keanu Reeves. Yeah, I have pictures of them in my house.
You have pictures of
with them. Yeah,
really?
Yeah.
Where would you meet? Just
in the place. They would shoot the movies. They would shoot the film. They would bring it into my place, get it developed, make the print would be made, and maybe the next day or that night they would come into. We had a theater. We had a movie theater that sat 25, 30 people. It was a big movie theater in the place. You know, it was built in the place. And they would come in and watch the dailies. You know, they call them the dailies. And something else, I forgot already. And they would sit there and watch them. But a lot of times I would meet them because I either worked on their movie and I would be introduced to them, and one thing led to another. And there was a guy who had a Polaroid camera. So he would take pictures of me and the stars. Then I would go to the drugstore and get them blown up from an 8x10, and I got them hanging on my wall.
Really?
Yeah. Woody Allen,
really?
A lot. Yeah, Richard Gere.
Wow. You have them all on your wall, or just a couple?
No, all of them. Yeah, the ones that I didn't lose.
You got them in your living room or something like that?
No, in the one of the bedrooms, which I made into a den.
Yeah.
You know, not much. I was friendly with everybody.
Yeah.
You know, even you know, I never got picked on. I was just I was friendly with a lot of people. I was a ball player back then. I played ball. You know, I was a pretty good athlete, and you know, I was a nice guy. You know, I really was, and I never hung around with kids who were going to get me in trouble. Or I was going to get into a fight with. You know, I certainly wasn't old enough to go into a bar. You know, so back then. You know, I'm talking 15, 16, 17, 18. But I never actually ever had to punch anybody, and nobody ever punched me. Never had a problem with anybody. Knock on wood. Well, no, I used to sing with a bunch of guys. You know, we just got together. Back then, you sang on the corner. You know, a lot of kids did that. If you got together with a bunch of guys, and one thing led to another, and you used to sing on the corner. That's how I met my wife. That's how I met my wife. I was singing with a group of guys, and some people watching us, and not my wife, who's my wife today, but some girls were watching us, and one of the guys in my group was a very, very good-looking guy. You know, tall, black hair, blue eye, really good-looking guy. And one of the girls came up to me and said to me, "Do you know, if you introduce me to your friend, I have a great girl for you. We go out on a double date." There we go. 52 years later, married to the same girl. Not that she didn't go out with other guys during that time, or I didn't go out with other girls, but it was meant to be. So we got together, and she invited me to her sweet 16, and I went. And we were fighting. I hadn't seen her in 6 months, but she invited me to her sweet 16. Obviously, she still had feelings for me, I guess, and I had feelings for her. And I went, and then the rest was history because we stayed together. I have one friend. We had a lot of friends. I had one very, very good friend. I had a couple of good friends. One of the kids on my block, him and I are still friendly, and he only lives 20, 25 minutes from here. Matter of fact, we both lived in Mattawan at the same time. He moved there because of me. And we know each other. We have pictures of each other in the baby carriage together. That's how long we know each other, over 70 years. And our wives are friendly, and we still go out. We go out all the time. I had another friend him and I were like this. You know, we're the ones who, him and I actually, this other guy, him and I were the ones who went out with a lot of different girls. We met him on buses. We met him on trains. We met him in the street. It was different back then. There was no Match.com where you can, or computers where you can meet these girls. But my friend was, one of these guys who can talk you out of your money. I mean, this guy was great. Unfortunately, I don't know what happened to him. After I got married, we saw each other a few times, and I don't know what happened to him. I can't find him because his name is too common, so it's hard to find him. And I think if he was still alive, he would have tried to find me. That's how we were good friends for at least 3 or 4 years. But the other guy who I just spoke about, who lives in Mattawan, Aberdeen, him and I are still close, very close friends. Matter of fact, we made each other, we didn't make each other, but we had a 50th, I'm going back 20-something years ago. We had a 50th birthday party that we both chipped in for, and we had over 150 people come. We knew somebody who was a police dispatcher, and he got a lot of the names of people in the old neighborhood that we came from, and he got a hold of a lot of these people. And they came, hadn't seen them in God knows how long. They came if they were married, they came with their wives, kids. It was great. We rented a hall. We rented a fire hall in Coltsneck, and it was great. I invited a few people from my place. They couldn't believe what a great party it was. Plenty of food, people were drinking like crazy. It was in October, a beautiful night in October, and we ran out of liquor. We ran out of wine and beer, which I couldn't believe that all these people would drink so much. It was a great party.